Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Walk-Ons. There are 3 walk-ons in the Tampa Bay area, one over in Lakewood, another in Wesley Chapel, and a third in Midtown Tampa, not too far from Raymond James Stadium. Walk-Ons has the best happy hour deals, including all day Tuesdays with those $5 Tito's drinks. Fantastic food, great assortment of drinks, and you can eat like a winner, drink like a champ over at Walk-Ons. It's our second Pewter Report podcast of the day. We had one earlier reacting to the press conference of Zack Robinson, the Bucs offensive coordinator. Today, we're going to shift gears, or tonight, I should say, and talk about the Senior Bowl. We had the first practice today, the 2026 Senior Bowl. The Bucs are certainly looking at defense, and there was a lot to pay attention to when it came to the defensive line and edge rusher, along with the inside linebacker as well. So we're going to talk a lot about that on today's show with all of the Pewter Report staff. We'll start it off. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is SR, Scott Reynolds of PewterReport.com. Scott, it's good to get back to Hancock-Whitney Stadium, see some prospects that the Bucs are going to be potentially bringing to their team, and some nice moments today, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. We weren't the only ones looking at those defensive players. Rob McCartney, assistant general manager, and Mike Beal, vice president of player personnel here in Mobile. Todd Bowles, Jason Light, still working on constructing that coaching staff. The Buccaneers have hired an offensive coordinator. We know that because we had the Zack Robinson press conference earlier in the day. If you missed that episode, we're happy to talk about it tonight, but we dedicated an entire almost 40-minute show earlier in today, so make sure you check that out on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. They're looking for defensive line coaches and safeties and cornerbacks coaches up next for Todd Bowles' staff. One of those guys might be here. Rashad Johnson is coaching the cornerbacks for the American team this afternoon, so we had a chance to see some of his handiwork. But the focus for us was not really on the secondary. It was on the defensive line today. Buccaneers really need to add to that unit. They need an outside linebacker, bad, to replace Hassan Reddick. Mm-hmm. They need another defensive tackle to replace Logan Hall. Vita Vea, we mentioned before, 31 years old this spring. He'll be a player entering his contract year. This team has not restructured his deal yet, so they haven't added any more years to that deal. Elijah Cansey entering a big 4th year in the system. We anticipate he'll get a 5th-year option picked up, because he was a first-round pick. But the jury's still out on his availability. When he's on the field, he's hell on wheels. And when he's not, this defense is not the same. So they've got to find another defensive tackle to get into that rotation, another starting caliber guy. Not another Greg Gaines type, but, a guy that can come in case something happens to Vita, in case something happens to Elijah Cansey. Because, Logan Hall had every opportunity in the world in a contract year to really pick up where he left off as a pass rusher last year with 4.5 sacks. He didn't get the job done this year. Elijah Cansey missed 14 out of 17 games. Yeah. And Logan Hall was just not an effective replacement. So they got to find that guy. We had a chance to look at some defensive tackles today, man.
Yeah, that we did. A couple players on each side certainly looking to make an impact and have their presence felt during this Senior Bowl, this first practice. Of course, one that we've been talking about a good amount is the defensive tackle over from Texas Tech. Lee Hunter certainly fit the billing, I believe, with what he was able to do in the Senior Bowl today. The report on him already is that he can help stop the run, but has a little bit of pass rushing prowess as well. And then on the American team side, Caleb Banks from Florida, the Gators. So if you're a Gators fan watching this, he definitely made his presence felt as well. Big tackle right at the line of scrimmage during the 11-on-11 session. So those are some of the top 2 defensive tackles that were going at it this afternoon.
That's right. Had a chance to really look at Lee Hunter. And, he's a player that when I talked to him after practice, he has not met with the Buccaneers yet, but I'm sure they probably will. Very highly regarded player. There has been some buzz that he may be a first-round pick. I didn't see that really caliber player today. really good against the run. His pass rush does need some work, but still a really good player. I'm anticipating the Buccaneers will have a chance to talk to him. Caleb Banks, as you mentioned, Matt, was a player that really had a pretty good year in 2024, but last year only played in 3 games for the Gators, had a foot injury, and that really knocked him out of a lot of action. Played early in the season and then missed some time until the last couple of games. So all eyes were on Caleb Banks today. He looks the part. He's a massive human being.
Yeah.
But it just the consistency from snap to snap, right? Again, he's a player that some have, even Pro Football Focus has him as a first rounder. I think he's more of a second round player. And that's kind of the theme at this Senior Bowl. After having a chance to watch the defensive linemen, the edge rushers from today, maybe the only first round prospect on the defensive side, especially up front, maybe TJ Parker from Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really good day today for the team in the morning, the national team.
Yeah, the national team.
And I thought he had some really quality reps, showed some power, showed some quickness, showed some suddenness. He kind of looked the part, and I thought he was pretty consistent from snap to snap.
Yeah, super aggressive, violent at the point of attack, certainly when either going up against an offensive tackle or when it was 11 on 11 and trying to get after the quarterback. And I think there was a question coming into this, who was the top dog? Who was the alpha in terms of the edge rusher group, whether it was on the national team or the American team? And for the national team, it's certainly going in. It was like, okay, are you team TJ Parker or are you team Romello Height? And I think what we saw, at least from the side that I was watching with Romello Height, especially in the beginning, where you're not even working on, against other players and stuff like that, Romello Height was like slipping and sliding all over the place. Now, obviously, that's not going to be like, oh, drop him down 2 other rounds because of something like that. But TJ Parker was certainly able to hold his own and accomplish what he wanted to accomplish and needed to accomplish, where Romello Height, I don't think, met as many expectations as I know I did going into it.
Yeah, he did not stand out today compared to other edge rushers. One of the edge rushers, if you've been following him on X, that had a really good practice today was Derek Moore from Michigan.
Yes.
And,
my goodness, the steamroll he had.
He had a tremendous rep today on Marcus Bell with 6'9" offensive tackle. Floored him in practice. I will say this. We saw this last year from Mike Green from Marshall. He did the same thing, ended up being a 2nd-round pick, had 3.5 sacks for the Baltimore Ravens. Decent rookie season, but not, a Pro Bowl caliber player by any stretch of the imagination. So this is not uncommon. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've seen it in all my years of covering the Senior Bowl. You have this guy that comes in as an edge rusher and he blows somebody up. And certainly now more than ever with social media, it goes viral. And all of a sudden it's like, God, the Bucs should draft him at number 15. Got to go back and watch the tape and have some context here too, right? I'm not saying Derek Moore is not a good player, but 21 career sacks, 10 sacks last year, 10.5 tackles for loss, and a couple forced fumbles. Won a national championship with Michigan back in 2023 in his first year as a starter. He's a good player, right? But we have seen in the past some guys have good practices, and that's great. He had a good practice today, but that's one practice. It's just like saying he had a good game, right? Well, you're playing 12 games in the regular season, maybe in a bowl game, right? That's 13 games. Well, one game out of 13 is not going to get you far in terms of the scouting process. So, but hey, better to show up and show out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he did that against Miami offensive tackle Markel Bell, who was just playing in the national championship. So I think you could tell, too, like Kalen Black, the Indiana running back, he was very much in rhythm. Like you can tell he had just played a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, where a lot of these other players haven't played in about a month and a half. So to do it against a Miami offensive tackle that just played in the college football national championship, it's certainly better to have good tape than to be the guy getting railroaded in that sense. And then another edge rusher that stood out was, I'm going to butcher his name, but Nadame Tucker from Western Michigan is a guy that certainly the offensive tackle he was going up against in 11 on 11s was winning what felt like every single rep, getting into the backfield, disrupting plays, making the quarterback get rid of the ball probably sooner than he wanted to. So I think that was certainly someone that won the day as well.
Yeah, and another player that generated some buzz was Zion Young. I thought that he had some good reps. He's a very active pass rusher, very energetic. I loved his energy. Again, I look at this and I'm a big believer in production. Doesn't necessarily have to be sacks, but show me that you can be a splash player in other categories, tackles for loss, forced fumbles, those types of things. That's really what I want to see. I want to see players that have the opportunity to be disruptive, make plays, show me you're a playmaker, and do it on a somewhat consistent basis. So he's a player that had 11 and a half career sacks, right? In 2 years at Missouri, plus 2 years at Michigan State. He had 6.5 sacks last year, 16.5 tackles for loss. So kind of a late bloomer there in terms of the production. But again, better to show up and show out than not show up at all. And so these are some players that really caught our eye today. And when it comes to defensive tackles, though, I think the other guy that really had a pretty decent day was Grayson Holton from Oklahoma. Yeah. Sturdy point of attack guy. Thought he flashed some quickness, some short area quickness. The Missouri defensive tackle as well, Chris McClellan, had a couple of really good back-to-back reps, and he's a bigger guy. It's 6'3", 315, whereas Grayson Holton, a little bit undersized at 6'2", 293. So those were some players, but you know what? We were talking to Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, of course, and Pewter Report alum, and we'll have him on the podcast in short order to talk maybe about the Senior Bowl or leading up to the draft. But this is not a great overall draft class, right? There's a lot of guys that are staying in college for fifth year, sixth year, sometimes seventh year, that are staying in for NIL money, and it's kind of hurting the draft now. And then you've got players that by the time they get to the NFL are 25 years old. Sometimes they're pushing 26, and that may make them a little unattractive to some NFL teams, especially if you're a new head coach and a new GM. You're looking to have a franchise cornerstone piece at any position, and you're drafting a 25-year-old guy. Well, by the time that first round pick is on his fifth-year option, he's 30 years old.
Yeah, and the shelf life of an NFL player is so small and short to begin with that it's funny. We were talking about like Akeem Mesidor and Romello Height as well, where they are older guys. But if you're in win now mode, you're willing to look past that. But it can also kind of impact the overall talent pool of this year's draft class. And I'll never fault the player for getting the NIL money. I mean, the way you're getting paid now, you're getting paid close to what the NFL player does in some circumstances in those situations. So beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but are we just saying, oh, this player is great because he's looking the best compared to a worse class, or is he actually up to the billing? That's kind of the big question that GMs have to figure out. Yeah.
And, it's a different story when you're Jason Light and your first overall draft pick is Mike Evans, who left Texas A&M at age of 20, barely 21, and he was a redshirt sophomore, And we've seen Mike now as a player. He'll be 33 this year in August, still going strong. But I mean, that's the longevity. You have a career that spans 12 years. This would be his 13th season, right? Whereas you draft a 25-year-old player, you might get him for 5, 6, 7 years, and then their career is done because they don't have that early head start. And maybe that's why someone like TJ Parker, maybe that's a little bit of a feather in his cap or a calling card, is the fact that he's a good player. Right, he might be the top player here in terms of first-round caliber ability, but he's only 21 years old. Maybe that works in his favor because you are getting a younger player with a longer shelf life once you get to the NFL.
Yeah, teams want to get a player and then put their spin on the player. They want to mold the player to obviously get the best of their abilities, but to fit their style of offense, or in this case, defense. And we're talking about a lot of defense. So, Parker was definitely the best of the bunch when it came to the edge rushers, at least for the first team that we watched, getting to the quarterback and just being fundamentally sound as well.
Yeah, the linebackers too, though. We're not just looking at defensive linemen, and we'll talk defensive tackles and defensive line. We're really looking at the trenches here. But with some of these linebackers, man, one of the players that I'm just going to go ahead and say it, and I interviewed him today, and I almost told him I loved him. But I didn't, because I'm a professional.
Well, Valentine's Day is around the corner.
That's true. Jacob Rodriguez. He's met with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a good sign. I hope they meet with them again and again and again and again until they just said, we have to draft this guy. He talked about his love for creating turnovers and taking the ball away. He says that football is a game of when you're on defense, is taking the ball away.
Yeah.
And he believes that has been ingrained in him. And I asked him, like, what is your knack for doing it? Is it instinct or is it technique? And he said it's both. I have the instincts to do it, and I also have the technique to do it. Something he firmly believes in. And the trigger on this guy, the diagnosis, whether it's a run play, sifting through potential blocks that are coming his way, flowing to the ball. He just finds that alley to get to the ball carrier, whether it's in the backfield, whether it's flowing down the line of scrimmage. He's great in coverage. Just a sensational player today. He just looked the part. You looked at him, Matt, and you said, that's an NFL linebacker.
He came as advertised.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to have Josh Capo on to talk a lot about the inside linebackers, so I don't want to talk over too much of what he's going to say. But he was the cream of the crop coming into the Senior Bowl in terms of inside linebackers. And I know Josh was watching every single rep that he had. But even just watching him, it was one-on-one coverage, inside linebacker against the running back. And, it's never typically fair to the defensive player, whether it's corner against wide receiver, because there's no pass rush, there's no safety help, whatever the case may be. But he's going against Seth McGowan, the Kentucky running back, and right as McGowan started to try to break and make a move, he just pushed him and almost knocked him to the ground, just showing the little bit of physicality that you can show in the Senior Bowl. Just technically sound all over the place, physical, wants to take the football away, was punching at it, didn't force a fumble in this practice, but certainly was punching at it. I think even more than some of the other players when they go and wrap up the ball carrier. So, he checked every box. I wouldn't say I was overly impressed because there was high expectations for him coming in.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I will say, just kind of like unscripted here, but he's got a mustache that's
Very cool
for
mustache.
real. It's biker, style of mustache. Like you could see him riding on a Harley, like a big old hog. You're riding into the stadium to, sack you, take the ball away, punch the ball
Upgrade
out.
over Tevin White's horse.
Exactly. There's no doubt about it. We have a new sponsor this offseason, which we're excited about. It is ruggedpiratebeard.com. And I will say this, if Jacob Rodriguez gets drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, our good friend Nicholas, who runs this company, he's a Pewter Report podcast aficionado, watches the podcasts all the time. It's a family-owned business here in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Check out the website, folks. Fantastic scents when it comes to the concoctions that Nicholas and his team over at Rugged Pirate Beard Company come up with. But they might have to change it to ruggedpiratemustache.com. That might have to be an offshoot if Jacob Rodriguez comes, because you got to think he's going to want to use the product as well. They have, this is just two brands right here. This is Captain Ashbourne and Gridiron. Fantastic scents. But we have a whole box of scents here, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. But you got to visit the website, whether it's the beard butter, whether it's the beard oils. It keeps your beard looking, smelling, and feeling great. And the Pewter Report crew has tried a couple of these scents, and we're going to talk about them probably on tomorrow's show. But just a fantastic company. Check out ruggedpiratebeardcompany.com. There's all sorts of scents. Gasparilla. They've got beard butter. This is
just
Captain
Keel Hall.
Captain Carver. Yeah. I don't even have a beard. I can't grow a beard, but they smell fantastic.
Long leaf.
Yeah, long leaf is a really good one. Tobacco flavored scent.
This is the bee's knees.
Yes. So make sure you check out ruggedpiratebeard.com. You're not going to be sorry. Let's see, Matt. When it comes to the play of the front seven, the national team had a lot of caliber in terms of the talent. The American team, I didn't think as much. I was a little disappointed in some of the one-on-ones with Gabe Akis until he got to the pass rush drills. Then he kind of came on.
Yeah.
But, part of watching the Senior Bowl and these practices is just watching how players interact with each other, take to coaching, what their level of energy is, physicality. And I expected to see more physicality from Gabe Akis. When he was doing a kind of a stack and shed drill at the line of scrimmage, he was kind of patty caking the pad. And I'm thinking, this is your audition. This is your job interview.
Scouts everywhere looking at you.
Strike the bag, son, and show some physicality. Now, he made up for it in the one-on-one pass rush drills, and that's maybe where it counts more. But I'll say this, a player that I wasn't terribly high on coming in was Zion Young, but this guy was walloping the pads. Yeah. And I like physicality. And let's face it, Matt, a Todd Bowles defense that could stand to be more physical, that was something that was triggering me a little bit, setting off some alarm bells. Zion Young, a player that I wasn't as high on as Gabe Akis, made a better first impression on me just because of that.
Yeah, we were talking about him right before practice started of he's one of those fringe guys of maybe didn't necessarily have the production in college football that he wanted, but certainly has the size to be a commendable player in the NFL and really help a team go out and win a football game. So, everyone's at different steps right now in the draft process. Some are already proven commodities. Some are the real deal. Others are, you kind of have an idea of what they're going to be coming in, and they either affirm your thoughts about them or you realize you were completely wrong about them. But with this player, he's certainly a guy that there was a lot of questions about, and that's why you come in and you try to show everybody that you are worth a first round, second round, third round draft pick, whatever the case may be. And he certainly did that today, I think, just in terms of his level of play and what he brought to the table.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what's on tap tomorrow too, because again, I'm a big believer in consistency. And when you look at trying to stack days together and be that, that guy that shows up, sometimes you're a one-hit wonder. And I've seen it before. You have one good Senior Bowl practice. The next day, whoever you're going up against kind of recalibrates and shuts you out the next day. So, for example, with Bell, the offensive tackle from Miami, I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think anybody's going to rock him the way he was rocked today. It's not good film for sure. We have a super chat to get to. Let's get to that real quick.
We do. Thank you to Kings Are Awful for the $5 super chat, getting to the conversation about the Bucs and Zack Robinson and his press conference today. Says Zack lying as hell when he said he lost sleep scheming against Bowles' defense. Dude probably slept like a baby. He didn't have to feed into Todd Bowles' ego.
Well, I think two things. Number one, he's got to be gracious, right? Because Todd Bowles just gave a job. So part of this is, what did you expect him to say? Kings are awful. Let's be real. Did you expect him to say, oh, yeah, I knew he was going to kick his ass. And,
say, I'm the captain.
Man. Yeah. So, he said what any new hire would say. You kind of suck up to the boss a little bit. And that's understandable. The other thing, too, though, is keep in mind, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was necessarily easy against Todd Bowles' defense, because we've heard from other opposing quarterbacks and head coaches and offensive coordinators. John Gruden's a big fan of what Todd Bowles does defensively. I think you're shortchanging it a little bit here. If anything, I say give credit to Zack Robinson for doing what he did against Todd Bowles' defense in the different looks and all of that. It's like, when you kind of unleash the hounds in your Todd Bowles and you've got these different pressure packages and blitz schemes and all that, to counter them as well as Zack Robinson did, I think is noteworthy and probably praiseworthy. So I'd rather praise Zack Robinson for handling it masterfully in those 3 wins out of 4 games over the last 2 years, rather than just kind of dunk on Todd Bowles.
Plus, it's one thing when Josh Allen and the Bills offense is balling out against Bowles, in that crazy game in Buffalo last season. But again, what we've talked about with Zack Robinson, who is he working with? Kirk Cousins coming
Right.
off an Achilles injury, and then an even older Kirk Cousins. And, the Penix, obviously, they lost that first game of the season, but not working with the best talent to still railroad Todd Bowles and score tons of points against him. Again, like, if the defense is going to struggle, that's not on Zack Robinson.
That's
like,
right.
Zack Robinson, if they're only scoring 14 points a game, no one's going to care that he scored 100 against Todd Bowles, because it's not about what you did, it's what you're doing now with the Bucs offense.
Yeah, I agree. Folks, if you're looking for legal help when it comes to maybe personal injury, Social Security, or maybe for workers' comp, there is one place to turn, and that is our friends over at Jorgenson Law.
Welcome to Jorgenson Law, PA, where our family's legacy drives us to fight for your rights. Specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security, we're committed to winning for you. No fees unless we succeed. Trust in our family to help yours. Let's achieve justice together.
That's right, Jorgenson Law, PA, the champions of the injured and disabled. Again, if you need help with workers' comp, Social Security, or personal injury, you can get a free case evaluation. I love free stuff. And no fees until they win. I love their confidence, right? They say, hey, you'll pay us when we win for you. Give them a call at 727-347-7733. That's 727-347-7733, or visit them on the web at jorgensonlawoffice.com. Now we bring in Josh Capo from Pewter Report. Josh, how we doing?
My hair's not doing so great, but the rest of me is fine.
It's okay. It was a very cold and windy day. I'm not sure if this is sunburn or windburn, but it is cold here in Mobile, Alabama. I know it's cold in Florida. It's a little colder here than it is back home. Let's see, the 39 degrees in Mobile right now. So back in Tampa, it's 44. So a little colder.
A little bit, and then the wind chill.
Yeah, but somebody who is hot today, aside from Jacob Rodriguez, and I didn't really talk about him because I know you wanted to talk about him. You've profiled him before on PewterReport.com. He's a player that I've liked, him and Rasheed Biles now at Pitt for several years.
Yep.
Is Kyle Lewis. And the one thing that we both agree on when it comes to Kyle Lewis, not the biggest linebacker. So if you're not a really big linebacker that's going to like fill in the A gap and take on guards and centers and stone guys at the line of scrimmage, you better cover. And boy, this guy put on a show today in coverage.
Yeah, he had an interception in one-on-ones and then a pass breakup as well. So in drills that are designed to not feature the linebacker, the defensive player, he was making plays. So really, really impressive from him. The fluidity, the movement skills, it's all there. And if you're going to be smaller, then you'd better be athletic.
Yep.
And he definitely showed the athleticism, showed the ball skills. And I want to say in 2024, he was one of the most productive linebackers in terms of ball skills in the NCAA. And then last year it fell off a little bit, still pretty good. But he definitely showed up today with those skills. And I would even say the movement skills were showing up in run defense when they were running 11-on-11s. He was shooting gaps. He was finding his way into the backfield. I think he definitely improved his stock today.
Yeah, when you look at what he was able to do in 4 seasons at Pitt, Rasheed Biles transferred. I want to say he went to Texas or Ohio State, one of those two schools. He took that NIL money. Kyle Lewis said, I'm ready for the NFL, though. 10 sacks, including 7 back in 2024, 6 interceptions. Josh, that's 4 interceptions in 2024, 2 interceptions last year. 6 interceptions is more than some defensive backs have in their entire college career. Forced a couple fumbles, had 2 fumble recoveries, 6 pass breakups. And one of those touchdowns was a pick 6. 101 tackles back in 2024. I believe was injured, missed a couple games this year, only played 11, had 81 tackles, 25.5 tackles for loss. He's a player that for a franchise that, let's face it, has kind of made a little bit of a living with undersized linebackers. You know, guys like Derek Brooks, Levante David. I mean, who doesn't love a big Sonny Styles type linebacker? Even a 6'1", 233-pound Jacob Rodriguez, who has stolen my heart. But boy, I can have a crush on 2 linebackers.
Yeah.
Lewis is pretty damn good.
There's a good chance the Bucs need more than one linebacker, so it's okay to like more than one. And as been pointed out over and over, there is a chance Sonny Styles wouldn't be there in the first round.
Right.
So it's good to have some backup options. And with Lewis, what I really enjoyed, we got to talk to him a little bit after his practice. He embraces the chip on his shoulder when it comes to how other people view him, because he is on the smaller side. Right. So a lot of people talk, well, should he shift to safety when he gets to the NFL? He doesn't want to shift to safety.
No.
He sees himself as a linebacker. And it's like that Michael Jordan meme, right? And I took that personally.
Yeah.
He takes every comment he hears about him not being big enough to play linebacker, and he takes those personally. And I can say, in terms of how he plays, he doesn't play like he's light.
Right.
I think the hits are he's not the biggest striker. He's never going to be. But he
packs
doesn't
a punch, though.
He doesn't let that hurt his mentality.
Right.
He wants to hurt people.
Yeah.
And it's a good trait to have in a linebacker.
He's not shy. He does not shy away from contact whatsoever. He embraces it. He's a smart player, though. He's not going to just give himself up and get engulfed by a bigger offensive lineman. But I thought he flowed really well laterally to the plays. The speed is there. He does have the speed of a safety. There's no doubt about it. And really, I think would be an ideal Mo backer. When I say Mo backer, money backer, that's the Levante David weak side linebacker spot in Todd Bowles' nickel defense, also really his base defense. But that particular linebacker spot, which is a coverage heavy, that would really be ideal for Kyle Lewis. And more often than not, like you said, you wouldn't mind them drafting 2 inside linebackers. They'll probably get 1 in free agency because I'm sure Todd would love to have a veteran aside from Servassier Dennis. But, Josh, we're pretty sure that when you look at Jacob Rodriguez, you're looking at a second-round pick. You're looking at a day two linebacker. Kyle Lewis, though, day 3, but I think he's got a chance of maybe being a 4th-round pick. If he tests well, if he continues to have good showing here. Servassier Dennis was a 5th-round pick. I think Kyle Lewis is more athletic and certainly can be a 4th. And, with this draft not being so great in terms of talent, we might see some players that got to kind of get picked a little bit out of order, if you will. In other words, there might be a team in the 3rd round that maybe doesn't have a 4th-round pick that just says, I'll take you with my late 3. So it's going to be curious to where he goes, but I think those middle rounds for Kyle Lewis.
Yeah, it's very amorphous right now. We were talking with Trevor Sikkema earlier today, where I've done a lot of research, and almost every draft has about 13 all-pros, guys who will eventually get at least one all-pro nod. Another 20 picks or so eventually become a Pro Bowler. And I'm not talking about a Shedeur Sanders Pro Bowl. I'm talking about a true Pro Bowler. And there are these very rigid, almost from draft to draft, outcomes.
Yeah.
Even when a draft doesn't seem like it's going to be deep like this one does this year, those outcomes tend to still come through.
Yeah.
It's just harder to see it right now.
Right.
And so what I think that'll lead in later on in the 1st round and even into those day 2 picks is you're going to see very unique draft boards show up where players where you're like, I definitely thought he was going to be a 2nd rounder, maybe go back to the 4th. Yeah. And a guy like Kyle Lewis maybe goes up further than you think because one team sees him as, we really don't know what the what this crop of players is, but this guy's got 1 or 2 skills we really, really like. Yeah. And in this draft, let's bet on that.
Yeah. Hey, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you really need 3 linebackers, whether 1 comes in free agency or 2, and then 1 in the draft, or 2 in the draft and 1 in free agency, because you have Levante David, who you're probably going to lose to retirement. Levante's now 36 years old. You have Anthony Walker Jr. Not sure if this team wants to re-sign him or not. But even if they do, he's not really a lock to make the roster. He didn't make the roster last year. Deion Jones, I was not impressed at all by Deion Jones this year. Those 3 players are free agents. They're the veterans. Servassier Dennis is in a contract year, right? Is he going to stick around or not? This is a big year for him. Will he start or not? Not if you draft a high linebacker this year and then sign him in free agency. Then he's battling for playing time. So I'd like to see the Buccaneers come away with 3 linebackers this year, preferably 1 in free agency, and then 1 between rounds 1 through 3, and then another one on day 3 to add depth, competition, and a couple of youthful guys into the mix, because we're a little top heavy this year in terms of the 30-year-old linebackers with Levante and Walker towards the end of the season, and then Deion Jones throughout the year. So we'll see how that shakes out. Who else caught your eye today in Mobile?
Yeah, I think there was a 2-play sequence for Scooby Williams where he had a pass breakup and
Texas
then
A&M linebacker.
Yep. And then the very next play after having the PBU against a running back on a little access route, then he came in on a blitz and would have had a sack. Obviously, in these practices, they're not actually doing full takedowns, but it definitely would have been a sack. So that was a nice little 2-play sequence from him. One that disappointed me, honestly, Scott, was Caleb Elarms-Orr from TCU. I've done a draft profile for him. What I really liked in that was that there are a lot of linebackers, you watch them in college and you go, how much of this is what they're going to be asked to do in the NFL level?
Yeah.
And it's not very much. But with Elarms-Orr, the defense that TCU was running, he was asked to do so much stuff that an NFL linebacker is going to be asked to do.
Yeah.
They put a lot on his plate. And I think I remember telling you, like, I really, really enjoyed that, but I come away from the tape going, but can he do it well?
Yeah.
And then we watch him today. And I think the answer based off of today's practice is no, he can't do it very well.
Yeah.
Just very stiff in his movements. Yeah. The running back one-on-ones were especially tough for him.
Yeah.
He was kind of selling his position. He was trying to hedge for an outside release. He would get crossed over. He had trouble changing direction. Just the feet seemed slow when he had to move in a different direction. So I would say kind of a stock down for him today after this first day of practice. Another one was Jack Kelly out of BYU. Kelly, you talk about like looking the old school part of a throwback to the 80s or 90s linebacker, complete with like the oversized pads and everything. But then when he just gets out there, the athletic deficiencies compared to the other athletes on the field just made it really tough for him to excel today. Yeah,
this is a player that I watched and hated at BYU because BYU was really good in the Big 12 and my Kansas State Wildcats were not. But he's just kind of that downhill guy. He's a way better version of KJ Britt. Is really what he is. 10 sacks last year for BYU, 13.5 tackles for loss. And the year before that, 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 1 interception, 4 forced fumbles. He is a player that is hell on wheels within about 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You put him in drive, and he will attack the line of scrimmage. He will get after the quarterback. He will sack the quarterback. You put him in reverse, man, is it slow. It's stuck in the mud. He's good in really shallow underneath routes, but that lack of speed, the lack of agility and athleticism, it shows up after about yard 6.
Yeah, the ideal role for him in the NFL is one that's actually making a small comeback, but that would be like your Sam backer, right? So somebody in a 4-3 base against 12 personnel, and he's somebody that you're going to attach to the line and create a 5-man front with. And that would be an ideal role for him, and just let him play forward.
Yeah.
And don't ask him to go side to side. Don't ask him to drop back unless it's some type of changeup that you're throwing out there. That's his ideal role. Yeah. The question is, how many snaps a game does that role get?
Exactly. Yeah.
Less than 10? And what kind of draft capital are you going to use on somebody like that? Could be a good special teamer. So this is definitely like more of a day 3 guy, like and it's a pure flavor type of guy, but not somebody who's going to help the Bucs linebacker room in 2026.
I mean, a stark contrast today, just within today's practice between Jack Kelly on one end of the spectrum and Kyle Lewis on the other, right?
Yeah.
The very first one-on-one linebacker, running back, pass rep drill featured Kyle Lewis, and he went about 30 yards down the field on a wheel route, masking, blanketing, covering up the running back, and breaking up the pass along the sidelines. Very, very impressive in coverage today. And let's face it, that has been the Achilles heel over the last couple of years, even with Levante David, the great legend, the aging legend, just not that coverage player that he used to be. And that's an area where they're going to have to upgrade both he and Servastier Dennis. They got to get linebackers that can buzz out to the flat and cover better, faster, quicker running backs. And then also, if Todd Bowles is going to mug those linebackers up the line of scrimmage, they got to be able to drop quicker, take away those short, shallow crossers from the receivers, from tight ends, and just not have that middle of the field be such a void that can be easily filled by enemy opponents.
Yeah, and I think Lewis can do all of that. The question is, when you mug him up and you ask him to go in the other direction, which is go forward from closed space.
Yeah.
And that's a big question with him. But I will say that play that you were just talking about, that
he blew up 2 running backs though.
He did.
Pass protection.
When you give him a runway,
right,
he really can turn his speed into a big hit. It's just, again, my worry there is when he's mugged up on the line of scrimmage and he has to go 2 feet and he's engaged with a guard or a center. Right. Can he create similar power? Exactly. But what I was thinking about was that that pass breakup against the running back. You know what it reminded me of from last year's Senior Bowl was the play from Jeffrey Bassa.
That's right. Yeah.
Where he got down the line of scrimmage on, it's kind of like a wheel route, was able to break up, and I think it might have even been an interception that he was able to grab on the line of scrimmage there, or on the sideline there. Just very similar. I was pretty high on Bassa coming out of that Senior Bowl. I have a similar feeling about Kyle Lewis here today.
Any other quick impressions before we do the hockey line change here and we'll go to Adam Slavon and Bailey Adams?
I think we've kind of highlighted it, but we talked about Jack Kelly and how there was that wide gulf between him and Kyle Lewis. Yeah. He might have been the second best linebacker on the American squad if he had been on the American squad.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the American squad, not as talented or as impressive as the national squad this morning. We'll see if that changes in terms of tomorrow's practice. One thing I do know for sure, though, is if you need to practice some golf game, if you're looking to play some golf, we'll do it at a place that we love, which is Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club, ranked in the top 3 in terms of best value courses in the Tampa St. Petersburg area by Golf Advisor. For tee times, give them a call at 813-907-7447. That's Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club, located up in the North Tampa area, just off Bruceby Downs. Fantastic golf course. I know it's too cold to golf right now, but folks, next week, Florida will come back to being Florida. And that's a place that Bailey Adams called home every day of his life. Bailey, when was the last time you saw snow? Last year is your first time.
Last year is the first time, yep.
Exactly. So no snow, thankfully, here in Mobile, Alabama. But the folks over at Heritage Isles, if they had snow, they would just shovel it right off the greens and say, come out here and play because we're in Florida, damn it. So make sure you check out Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club.
I did see snow actually right around this time last year, my first time ever seeing snow. And thankful to not have that experience right now in Mobile. Though it was cold enough at some points for today. But how you doing, Sly?
I'm doing great.
We successfully made the hockey shift. No too many men on the ice penalty. There's ice out in Mobile at some point. But I just want to get your first impressions of kind of this whole class we're seeing at the Senior Bowl, compared to last year or past years. What are your thoughts so far overall of the class that we've seen just through one day of practice?
Yeah, I would agree with Scott, and based on our conversation with Trevor Sikkema before, it is a bit of a weaker class, and especially when you look at the Senior Bowl as compared to years past when you saw so many first round kind of guys, you saw so many people back out at the last minute that you were really excited to see, like Hakeem Mesidor, the edge rusher from Miami. He's not going, and you're like, man, who's going to be left here? But with that, I think the guy that really impressed me the most today was TJ Parker, the Clemson edge rusher. And we did a roundtable today kind of going over players that we're really excited to see this week. And Parker was my pick. And he had some great reps today. He absolutely bowled over a left tackle. And Bailey and I actually got the chance to interview him. And right away, you just see his maturity. And he was comparing himself to other players that he watches.
Yeah.
And one that stood out to me, Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
Same height, same weight, and man, just so physical.
Yeah, and you always get kind of at certain positions, you'll get the kind of the blanket answers that you kind of expect. And you ask him, who do you watch? Who do you like at the position? He of course mentioned Max Crosby. He mentioned Myles Garrett, and then he kind of got to it and he got to Khalil Mack, and I was intrigued by that last answer. Obviously, what Khalil Mack has done over the course of his career has been spectacular, but I think that with the similarities, that is an interesting answer. So I'm curious, with him being your pick in the roundtable, what were you kind of expecting or hoping to see coming into today, and what did he live up to what you were hoping to at least see through day one?
Yeah, he definitely lived up to the hype for me because coming into this week, kind of had him as like a late first round guy. But now, after seeing him out there, the energy, the physicality that he brings, you could really argue, especially with this kind of draft class, that he could work into the middle of the first round. And he had 21 and a half sacks across his college career. Asked him about back in 2024, he had 6 forced fumbles. So I'm like, man, how'd you do that? And he's like, every single day, whether it was like a walkthrough practice, we're out there, we're doing a turnover circuit, we're trying to knock the ball out of the ball carrier's hands. And it's like, man, Tampa Bay could really use that with the pass rush.
They really could. And it's one of those things, I think about it a lot, actually. And it's going to sound sad. It's not, I promise. But I think about it a lot with what we've seen from the Bucs defense in recent years and their inability to take the ball away. And I think back to that 2019 season that Shaq Barrett had, where he had the 19.5 sack season. Yes, he also had the 6 forced fumbles. And I think I almost find myself, I didn't think I appreciated it enough at the time what he did in that season. And I think, yeah, again, that's the type of thing, of the knack for getting after the football. And
you can't teach that.
Yeah, you can't. And you saw it a little bit too later on, not to skip ahead too much, but with Gabe Akis, who I know they talked about him earlier, Scott and Matt talked about him, but in the second practice, the American squad, the Illinois edge rusher, Gabe Akis, I thought at certain points he had flashes of what made him so successful during his Illinois career, which ended with him being the second leading sacker in program history, behind only Simeon Rice. You saw this against in the 11-on-11s. He got around the tackle with relative ease, and he got after the quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, knocked the ball loose. And it was one of those plays where you can just see he wasn't just going in for the sack, he was going in for the football. So that's the kind of thing that whoever the Bucs end up zeroing in on with this pick, or whoever they're trying to build their pass rush around, that's got to be, one of those traits that they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at Parker and Akis, those are 2 guys that I have circled right now as fits maybe for the Bucs when it comes to adding another edge rusher. And you look at Akis, his production, he was a team captain at Illinois, and his sack numbers. So he had 27 sacks there, 19 sacks over the past 2 seasons. And then the last 4 games of his college career, he had 6.5 sacks. So you just see that first step explosion. He's very powerful. And he had some up and down moments today, but I think there was enough positivity that maybe tomorrow and Thursday's practice, he could really turn it up a notch.
Yeah, and on that topic, and speaking of getting after the football, I believe both the last 2 years, he had 3 forced fumbles.
Yeah.
His junior year, 3 forced fumbles his senior year. So another one of those guys who can take the football away. But, I think one of those things is I'm really intrigued and interested for day 2 tomorrow, just because, you kind of see some of these guys do come out day 1 and they get after it. And then you'll see more guys emerge on day 2. I don't know whether it's, day 1 just wasn't their best practice. They just didn't have the reps that they wanted to have, or, they're just getting their feet underneath them. It's a whirlwind of a few days here for all of these guys. So I'm curious to see kind of who can continue to maintain that consistency into day 2, but also who a lot of the guys are that are emerged that maybe we aren't talking about too much today, or we're a little disappointed from what we saw from them. But as a whole, this group is kind of interesting, just because it feels like it could be anyone. In a lot of ways, it feels like it could be any of these guys, because, like they mentioned earlier, there's not that same high-end talent that you typically see in a given year. I know last year, coming into the Senior Bowl, there was a lot of talk about it being the most talented class that they'd seen, here in Mobile. And as I was doing research leading up to this week, I'm looking at these rosters, and I really kind of got that feeling where I was like, I don't know if this is, obviously it's not last year, but I kind of looked at it and I was like, all right, this isn't the most star-studded class. And that's even before you see Mesidor and Reuben Bain and
David Bailey,
D'Angelo Pons, these guys dropping out on Sunday or the weekend before. So it is interesting, because there are some of these maybe more under the radar names that we could see pop up over the next couple of days. And I think there were, we talked a little bit about, we talked about Parker. I didn't want to say to Parker. I asked Parker when I opened up my questioning with. I asked him kind of give me some of his strengths and his weaknesses, and he talked about his power and how he takes pride in the power that he plays with. But I found it interesting to see him or hear him not really shy away from the idea of saying, I not that necessarily it's a big weakness, but that he has things that he can work on. And he was acknowledging that he's always working on his angles, and it was something that even on day one of the Senior Bowl, he's working with on the coaches are working on him with, and he's trying to kind of fix his angles and his routes to the quarterback. So I don't know. I enjoyed it was a brief conversation, but I enjoyed talking to TJ Parker, and you kind of saw that. Like you mentioned, you saw that maturity shine through.
Yeah, he reiterated that point of improving so often, and you just kind of see him as maybe a moldable piece of clay that with the proper coaching, and maybe that's Larry Foote next season, he can develop an outside linebacker to kind of, again, be that Shaq Barrett, that physical imposing force, because that's really what the front seven needs. And kind of segmenting that to the linebackers. I know Scott and Josh and Matt also talked about him. One guy that I was kind of impressed by was Bryce Becker out of Oregon. And he's not just an inside linebacker in football, but he's a center fielder drafted last year by the Houston Astros. And when I see him, I just see a physical thumper. And there was one rep against Penn State running back Nicholas Singleton. He just laid him on the ground.
One of the best reps of the day, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the production in college, converted defensive back. He had 136 tackles last year. So, he can bring down the ball carrier.
Yeah. I think he had some good moments. I know Josh has talked a lot about Kyle Lewis. He had some great moments. The one-on-one, which in most cases when you're playing one-on-ones or you're going through the one-on-one period of practices, it's just putting the defender at a disadvantageous position. They're kind of built for the offense to win. Yeah. And so anytime you see a defensive guy win the rep as cleanly as Lewis did, where he stuck with the running back. I believe I'm trying to remember who it was. I can't remember off the top, but he stuck with the running back who ran a good route. He was right on his hip the whole time. Took a sharp cut, and he was able to jump the pass and bring it in, holding on to the football, which is something that's another thing the Bucs could use is guys who can hold on to the football. So yeah, I was impressed with Lewis, and then of course Jacob Rodriguez. He looked the part, and he was one of the guys I think I've probably watched the most of just throughout his this season with Texas Tech, and obviously with UCF, my alma mater, being in the Big 12. And there you go, going up against him, a guy it's hard to miss. And he was hard to miss on Tuesday at practice. I think he really did look the part of everything you would have expected from him, just from, whether it's the tape, whether it's watching him in an in-game situation. The stat sheet speaks for itself. Oh, yeah. I know Scott will continue to peddle the how he fills up the stat sheet the way he does, but really just an impressive linebacker. I actually took a stab at my own Bucs mock this past weekend, and he's a guy that I zeroed in on because I think he would transform this defense, and they need improved linebacker play, and I think he could give it to them, this season. And yeah, that room as a whole, I'm curious to know, because when Scott and Josh were on talking about linebackers, I was curious to ask you your thoughts on this linebacker room, and if you're the Bucs, what you're doing this offseason. Are you going out and are you getting 3 or 4 linebackers? Because to me, Servassier Dennis isn't somebody that I'm super content relying on.
No, not at all.
So,
and right now he's linebacker number 1 in the room.
So I'm curious, would you go out and just straight up say, I'm trying to find 2 starting linebackers and pushing him down, making sure either through competition's sake or just straight up he's going to be a depth guy?
Yeah, I think he should be linebacker maybe 3 or 4 in a perfect world. You don't really want to rely on Servassier Dennis. At least he showed this year that he could play a full season.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big step in the right direction for him. And you kind of saw some promise later in the year after he struggled, especially in coverage against running backs early on. But I say go out there in free agency, get one of the big 3. Maybe it's Devin Bush, maybe it's Devin Lloyd, maybe it's Nakobe Dean, make a scene in Tampa Bay. One goes out, one comes in maybe. But I think one of those guys, and then you look at somebody like Rodriguez. He's not going to be a first-round player, right. I don't think. It might be crazy come draft time, but second or third round, I'm really curious to see how he tests. They showed some of the metrics out there, and he ran 18.73 miles per hour today. So he's fast. I know that was kind of a knock on him, but you look at his statistics, and you said they speak for themselves. 128 tackles, 7 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. He ran out of the Wildcat, scored a touchdown even. Like, he's a very talented player. And I think the biggest thing with him, he's just simply a football player.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bucs need, especially at linebacker. So maybe next year, if they had a room of like Devin Bush, Devin Lloyd, Jacob Rodriguez, maybe Sarasier at 3, draft another guy in the 5th or 6th round. That's a lot stronger of a room. And it's not so much a glaring weakness like the black hole in the middle of the field.
And that's what it has been in recent years. And I understand, to an extent, a little bit why it's been that way. Obviously, they have continued to bring Lavonte David back, as he's continued to age. And I don't think his play dropped off as much until this past year. I think we started to see a little bit more like, okay, it's really starting to catch up to him. So it feels like this is probably the natural transition offseason for that room, where Lavonte is probably going to retire and it's time to get in, fresh blood in the linebacker room, which is crazy to think about given how long Lavante's been here. I mean, this would be their first season since 2011 without Lavonte David in that linebacker room. So it speaks to his longevity, obviously, and his excellence. But I think that's the position that I'm looking for the most turnover, the most transition of the ones on this roster.
Yeah, and maybe it comes in the 1st round even with somebody like Sonny Styles. But to your point about just the longevity, they need another linebacker that can hold it down for another 5 to 10 years at least. They need to go out. That has to be a priority, I think, this offseason, is you just see so much from the inside linebacker position. That is the identity. That is the lifeblood of a defense. You saw it back in the day with Derek Brooks and Hardy Nickerson. Like, just those two players can transform a defense, transform a culture. And I think right now what this defense needs is a similar kind of player.
Right, and this defense for the better part of a year and a half, 2 years has just simply been broken. And I don't think it gets fixed until they fix the linebacker play. They need good linebacker play. And that's why I think between the 5 of us, I would be curious to know what the analytics are on the split for how much each of us watched linebackers versus every other position throughout the day today, because I think at different points, all of us had our eyes on them. But another guy I did want to mention, I wanted to go back to the pass rush a little bit because they talked about him earlier, but Zion Young was the one who really stood out from Missouri. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you maybe have seen some of the clips that have come out over on Twitter/X.
Yeah,
he had some fantastic reps, and it is a guy who I think this is where you get into the production question mark, because when you watch him play, he plays with so much violence, and he just has that energy, that has that burst to him. And then you look at the numbers and you're like, well, then where is all
where
of
that
this?
though?
So I mean, he really came on strong this past year, obviously. With his best year, he had 6.5 sacks and 16.5 tackles for loss. But even with those 6.5 sacks this year, he had 11.5 in his 4-year career, 2 years at Michigan State, 2 at Missouri. So it's one of those that does get tricky because you play traits versus production. And I still don't even know. It's an age-old question, I think, and I don't even know where I fall on it. But I think in this scenario, you do wonder, why hasn't it translated, with just a little bit we've seen of him, because I think he has kind of that juice that you need.
Yeah, definitely has juice, but it's consistency. And I think that's what the outside linebacker room needs at this point. I remember Jason Light last year at the NFL Combine. He's like, we value production. And Chris Braswell, while he might be a bust, he had 8 sacks at Alabama his last season. And that really played a part into the Bucs really looking at him as an option. Like, if he could do it at Alabama, maybe he can do it at the NFL level, but he just doesn't have the traits. He doesn't have the juice. So you kind of need both. You need a guy who, at least he showed flashes in college, and that's what Zion Young did. But at the same time, you kind of need that on a consistent game-to-game basis.
And that's where you look at Braswell, and I know he was behind, and I don't want to turn this into a Chris Braswell conversation, but he was behind some great pass rushers at Alabama, which is maybe why he didn't get on the field and why he only had the chance to have that 1 8-sack season right before hitting the draft. But the 1 year, the 1 year of production versus multiple years of production, you also can you get further into that and you start to kind of separate some of these guys as prospects. So it's an interesting one. He's another guy I'd be curious to see if it is another one where tomorrow's practice he comes out and has a similar type of day, or if it was just kind of like, all right, he won some reps, he dominated those reps, and that was kind of just his moment of the week, or if it's something he can translate over the course of the week. One guy, we've talked about defense all day, which I know Scott loves. I want to switch over to the offense just briefly. Georgia State wide receiver Ted Hurst. He had the catch of the day deep down the field from Garrett Nussmeier. I thought originally, I've gone back and looked, and I don't think he did what I originally thought he did. It looked to me from where we were sitting that he caught it, like he had it initially with one hand in the end zone, almost kind of trapped it against himself and the defender as they were going to the ground. And then when he came back up, because everyone thought, okay, that's incomplete.
Yeah.
He came back up, he had the ball. And if you go back and you watch some of these clips that people had on social media, yeah, he had that all the way. And it was one of the best catches I've seen probably, in the 4 years that I've been coming here now. It was a fantastic play. And I know it's not likely that, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if the Bucs do decide to add, offensively and then even add to the receiver room later in the draft. But just a moment that really stood out on an otherwise kind of there were the moments today, but I think that was almost one of the moments.
Yeah,
not at a position of need for the Bucs, but it was still a fun one to see.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was like when you watch a center fielder dive for the baseball and you're like waiting for him to show that he caught the ball in his glove. That was that play for Ted Hurst today. Yeah. And funny enough, Ben Chikuma was teammates with Hurst back at Georgia State. Mm-hmm. I had to ask Ben, I'm like, hey, what do you think of Ted Hurst? Did you see that catch? And he's like, yeah, man, that was crazy. He's an amazing talent. You really can't teach that ability. And at Georgia State, he had a 1,000-yard year in 2025. The year before that, he got really close. And it's not a position of need. It's a great position of luxury for the Bucs right now. But great to see that. Another number 7, Tyron Montgomery out of John Carroll had a great catch today. So you kind of saw some wide receivers making plays. You always want to watch them and kind of see how the cornerbacks do against them, because cornerback could be a position need. But didn't see too much out of that position today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't see a ton, and maybe I'll spend a little bit more time tomorrow watching the corners. That it could very well be a need with Jamel Dean potentially out the door, and I think there was obviously some good from Benjamin Morrison in the moments that he had, but also he just had that hamstring continue to pop up as an issue all year long. So you go into this offseason, you're going to need to bring in another corner.
Yeah,
absolutely. So maybe they'll find one here. Maybe it's one that they could look at in the middle rounds. And I know Jason Light loves those kind of day 2, second round, third round corners. So maybe that's a need that we're maybe not talking about as much as pass rush and linebacker, but it's still going to be a need.
And they dipped into the K-State well last year. You mentioned Benjamin Morrison, but they also got Jacob Parrish in the third round. Kind of that nickel outside corner. There was another defensive back from K-State that flashed today. That was VJ Payne, the safety. He had a pass breakup on one rep. I think it was the same rep where Parker absolutely bowled over the left tackle. Peyton, the quarterback, he was rushing, trying to get the ball out, and Payne broke it up. So maybe he's another guy, a third safety, a backup safety, someone to maybe add to the secondary, because for as much as we talk about all the defensive deficiencies, I mean, just a pass defense overall, Bailey has to get better, because that's Todd Bowles' specialty, right? It should be. He was a former NFL safety. You think he would have that part down?
Yeah, and it has been almost at all levels over the last couple of years a huge issue. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they end up finding from the Senior Bowl. I know it's something that I wrote about earlier this week. 32 Jason Light draft picks from the Senior Bowl since 2014, and if you're a betting person, and I don't think this is a line out there anywhere, but over 1.5, maybe over 2.5, that's something that you could definitely look at, because he does like his Senior Bowl products. 3 last year, I think 2 the year before, 3 the year before that. So definitely a lot. I believe we're going to do another hockey shift here, and we will wrap the show up. We're going to bring back in Matt Matera.
And just want to remind everybody to check out Briar Greaves Insurance. They're a sponsor of this podcast. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether that's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, there's nobody better to work with than the great people over at Briar Greaves Insurance. We've seen how crazy the weather is. You never know when that can impact your home or your family situation. So check out Briar Greaves Insurance on their website, briargreavesinsurance.com, or you can give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. A couple of last thoughts about the Senior Bowl that I want to get to. We've talked a lot about the defense, understandably so. Really like what I saw from Kalen Black today. Again, you could tell he was a guy that had just played a week or two beforehand. Also, the Penn State running back, Caden Allen, spoke to him earlier. He met with the Buccaneers. I thought he broke out some big runs today.
Very physical runner, averaged over 6 yards a carry last year. Like, if they need another running back, Allen's should be at the top of the board.
And then, the tight end position, still looking to see a little bit more of that. Stanford's Sam Rush had a nice catch downfield in the latter half of the practices. So tight end, certainly, we'll see what happens with Cade Otton. Are they going to upgrade? Are they going to stay with Cade Otton or downgrade if you're Josh Capo and your team on? Before we get out of here, we always spent a lot of time in the draft, but, Scott and I gave our opinions earlier about Zack Robinson and his introductory press conference. Everyone else at Pewter Report listened to it as well. Adam, what were your thoughts about Zack Robinson, what he had to say in this press conference today?
I thought it was a refreshing press conference to kind of hear him outline his vision for the Bucs offense. And I did a story on PewterReport.com today, really building it around Baker Mayfield. He is the guy, leading the ship, and he's going to be one steering it. And that's how far this offense is going to go next year. And you have to get Baker Mayfield back to the form he had in 2024 if they want any chance of going on a deep playoff run. He showed then that he could be a really efficient quarterback in the right system. He can make the plays in structure. And you didn't see so much of the lower variance. Oh, he's throwing interceptions, he's inaccurate. If you get him into a rhythm early, you have a really good Baker Mayfield. And it sounded like that's what Zack Robinson wants to do. And then otherwise, just like his comments on building a culture similar to the Rams. And he talked about that with the Falcons when he was still their OC, but just one that, it's more modernized, and it's not what you saw last year with Josh Grizzard. But if they can get back to what they had with Liam Cohen, I think this is a really great fit. And I think this is going to be the guy who is closest to maybe realizing that.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he won the press conference today. Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to come down to him and Baker Mayfield working together. They do have that history together. But hopefully they can get the Bucs back on track, scoring like they did when Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator. And we'll see what happens. But it was a good first step, I believe, with Zack Robinson in his press conference, his introductory press conference as the Bucs offensive coordinator. We're still going to keep talking about Zack Robinson, the Bucs offense, the Bucs defense as well, along with the draft. So tomorrow's show, it'll be around 6:30 Central, which is 7:30 Eastern. We're going to recap day 2 of the Senior Bowl, all the events, what went on during that day as well. So if you're not already doing so, please make sure you're following us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video. Any prospects that you like, that you want the Bucs to draft, any prospects from the Senior Bowl that you saw some highlights about and are hyped about with the Bucs, and I don't know, anything Bucs related, feel free to comment on that. So that's going to do it for us for tonight's show. For Scott Reynolds, for Josh Capo, for Bailey Adams, for Adams Levon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.